Welcome back to For the Record, Law&Crime Network. I'm Linda Kenney Baden. I will be your host till 3 o'clock. Let me tell you that we have a very special guest on for the next few segments, and that will be Jose Baez, the attorney. You know him very well. He's had a number of not guilties across the nation in the United States. You started learning about him in the Casey Anthony case. Well, he's now a defense attorney, lead defense attorney for Dr. William Husel, whose case goes to trial probably next week in terms of the second part of jury selection, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Dr. Husel is accused of ordering excessive fentanyl doses to kill 14 patients. The question will be whether or not he was giving comfort care or whether or not his intention was to kill patients. All right. The state initially charged him with 25 counts of murder and recently dropped them to 14 counts. There was a little bit of a hearing that went on earlier a couple of months ago. Let's listen to a little bit of that hearing, and then on the other side, we will talk to Jose Baez.
Did you review the patient files for the patient that correlates to count 18 in this indictment?
Yes.
What did you find in regards to the prescription of opiates for that patient?
That individual's medical record indicated that there was prescription opiate use at home prior to hospitalization.
Did you review the patient file that correlates to count 19 in this indictment?
I did.
What did you find in regards to the prescription of opiates for that patient?
There was utilization of prescription opiates at home preceding hospitalization.
Did you review the patient files for the patient that correlates to count 21 of this indictment?
Your Honor, I do want to object again because none of this material is cited in his report as a basis for anything.
Your Honor, in coming to his conclusions in his reports, he reviewed the entirety of the medical files. The appropriateness of Dr. Husel's care took into account the same things that he reviewed, and the ultimate conclusions take into account everything within those files.
But you're making correlations there. Hold on. The whole purpose of the reports are to put people on notice. We've been very careful throughout this. Okay, I'm gonna let you make your record, but she's gonna have full reign on these. I'll note her objection. The whole thing about this hearing today is making a record, so I'm gonna give you a little leeway. But, you know.
Again, Your Honor, this is completely outside the scope of their motion. Totally.
I want to welcome to the show my friend Jose Baez. You know that I've tried a number of cases with Jose, and a disclosure, I was consulted in the Dr. William Husel case. I am not on the team. I have not been retained, but all of you should know that Jose Baez will be trying the case with local counsel Diane Menashe. Welcome, Jose. Okay, so we just watched a clip. What is this case about?
Well, first off, hello, Mom.
Hi.
I don't know, getting that we're friends. No, I, in light of this case, it's what it's about is really about death and dignity, and I think this case is an affront to all caring and compassionate doctors out there who want to allow people to have their last moments on earth be peaceful ones, free of pain, and allow their loved ones to see them die with dignity. And I think this case is incredibly important. It's not really a case, it's more of a cause for me. And I am deeply, deeply passionate about it, and my client, Dr. William Husel.
And when you got involved in this case, you were very concerned about that issue. Here, the state must show that there is an intent to kill the patients. The intent for Dr. Husel was murder, was homicide. You say the intent, and I assume this will be from everything I've read, it was to alleviate pain when in the process of dying, especially since some of the patients were intubated and they had to be extubated. Is that correct?
Yes, and what everyone must know right off the bat, that these are patients who their families had agreed to withdraw life support measures. They were unstable patients already on full life support who were in the process of dying. And these are people who didn't want to die with tubes coming in out of their bodies and had expressed their wishes previously And these were really the prosecution, their theory, which is a very novel one, is that these patients died in 5 minutes as opposed to 10. And when there's in fact no way of knowing how long a person would have lasted once being taken off life support.
Well, you know, I remember my grandmother and mother talking about deaths in their family, and there was always a wink, wink that their relatives were in the hospital, they were going to die, and the doctors gave, at that time, would be morphine, like an overdose of morphine, so that they wouldn't suffer in dying. Are you looking for older jurors who have that type of knowledge, or what type of juror are you looking for?
Well, I have to correct you first off. This is not an overdose of morphine or fentanyl. These are cases where, if you look at Dr. Husel's dosing habits, he's an aggressive doctor when it comes to treating pain, and that's because his background is in anesthesiology. And basically, they vary based on various factors that are individualized per the patient. So as it relates to jurors, I think what we're looking for mostly are jurors that are going to keep an open mind. He's received tons of bad publicity, and as you know, when you're charged with murder, you can't give your side of the story the second it hits the news. These things are best left for the courtroom, and that's where they're needed to be laid out. And there's never enough room for the facts in the headlines.
Yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting that this was a morphine overdose. As a matter of fact, the case involves fentanyl. Now, is there a universal worldwide standard for what you give a patient when they are dying or when they have to be extubated and they're at death's door so that they don't have any pain?
No, which is why this case is so ridiculous, absurd. It's a seminal prosecution where it's incredibly ambitious, and it overreaches far beyond medicine, and it takes the discretion out of the hands of a doctor who's at the bedside and gives it to a lawyer in the courtroom. And I think that's what makes this case so dangerous for all physicians and as well as patients and prospective and future patients down the road. There's not a doctor out there that's going to risk their life, much less their livelihood, if they fear that they're going to be retaliated against and charged with murder.
And indeed, let me ask you this. Initially, Dr. Husel was charged with 25 counts of homicide, of murder. It's now down to 14. Are you able to tell us how you intend to use that dismissal of those 11 counts for your benefit, for the benefit of your client and against the prosecution?
Well, Linda, you know me. One is too many, and two is redundant. He's only got one life to serve, and the penalty is life without the possibility of parole. So in light of all of this, this is just showboating. It always was showboating by the prosecutor who charged this case, who really has no medical background, didn't have the forethought to think that maybe this person might be innocent, and it's a sad day for justice.
Tell us about your client, what attracted you to this case, how you got involved, and a little bit about your client and his medical degrees.
Well, I was in the middle of trying another case, and he had reached out previously to me when he first got charged. And then I want to say about a month into his case, the lawyer who was representing him could not continue the representation. So he reached out to me again, and the timing was right. To tell you a little bit about Dr. Husel is really, he was a young doctor and has a family, 2 beautiful little girls, and he had only been practicing medicine. This was his first job out of medical school, and was considered one of the finest doctors throughout the intensive care unit. In fact, each and every single witness that was questioned on this case by law enforcement were told by the people who worked with him side by side daily how many lives he saved and how he was an excellent doctor a caring and compassionate doctor. They described him as a doctor who would not only be present, as you know, doctors have a special room at night that they can go and sleep and wait there until being called upon. That was not Dr. Husel. Dr. Husel was always on the floor. And when things were slow in the ICU, he always took time to teach the nurses and physician assistants basically how to save lives and how to help patients. He dedicated his life to taking care of the ill and the sick and not to taking lives as what he's been accused of.
Jose Baez, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I want to pick back up on your description of Dr. Husel and ask you whether or not he has the support of any of the nurses, for instance, that he worked with at the hospital. I hope you're going to stay with us. I know our viewers are going to stay with us. Jose Baez on the other side, giving us his insights to his defense of his client, Dr. William Husel. The trial should be starting after next week. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTube TV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTube TV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. For the record, I'm Linda Kenney Baden. We have a very special guest with us, my friend Jose Baez, who also is one of the most well-known trial attorneys in the United States. He has had a number of not guilty verdicts you probably don't read about because they're involving federal case, securities law, but you know him from the Casey Anthony case, but that was a long time ago. He is now representing Dr. William Husel in Ohio, a case that the opening statements are set to begin on February 22nd. A jury selection is still underway. Jose, when we left, I was asking you about your client who you've come to know so well. Are there a number of people he worked with, nurses, for instance, that support him?
Oh, it's overwhelming, the support that he's received, initially especially because in fact, as soon as the ICU found out he was fired, they filed a petition and everyone signed it, asking for and demanding his reinstatement. So each and every interview conducted by law enforcement was positive. They all find him to be a compassionate, caring, and very good doctor. And the support couldn't be stronger. But unfortunately, you know how these things work. The next thing you know, the hospital fired over 25 employees, as if this is some grand conspiracy of murder that was committed with 30 people. And once that was done, they then reported them to the nursing boards and pharmacy boards, and they've had to endure that ordeal, and as well as civil cases. Once the hospital notified all of the patients' families, every single one of them filed lawsuits. So this is a big mess. In addition to that, you have the prosecutors telling these nurses and pharmacists that they're not going to charge them so long as they cooperate. And this is the type of situation that we find ourselves in. As you know, Linda, a person's story right off the bat sometimes changes when there are outside influences pushing them. And sometimes people are, due to fear, get away from doing the right thing. And I'm not saying that any of these nurses are going to do that, but we're hoping and praying that they stay strong and they stand up for what's right, and they come forward and continue their support for Dr. Husel.
Okay. So let's listen to a little bit of what happened in a hearing. I think it was in December, where the defense brought in Dr. Earwig, if I'm pronouncing his name right. He was a chief medical officer, working towards a hospice, and is discussing fentanyl and its administration, especially if you have an opioid tolerance. Let's listen.
What is your opinion in having reviewed the patient file TY regarding any conclusion specific to TY that the administration of 2,500 micrograms of fentanyl that resulted in her living for 10 days is a conclusion that someone off a ventilator receiving that much of the fentanyl is per se lethal or inappropriate.
My professional opinion, again based on experience, is no, that it is not inappropriate.
No further questions.
Jose Baez, that was presented by your office, and I believe that was during the hearing to dismiss some of the counts in the indictment that was charged. Subsequently, if I have my timing correctly, there are a number of counts that have been dismissed. 11 counts out of the 25 have been dismissed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
What's interesting, that what I think your viewers might find interesting is the patient that was discussed received more fentanyl than any of the subsequent patients that are actually charged. So Dr. Husel's experience with this one patient who was experiencing what is known in the industry as a bad death was given 2,500 micrograms in a period of 38 minutes and went on to live for several days after the fentanyl had left her system, and she was off a ventilator and did not experience any type of respiratory depression or any side effects that might have killed her. And I think it's an important patient because it clearly shows that in his experience, these doses are not fatal. And it's a major hurdle for the prosecution. I know they're going to discount her as an anomaly, but that's not that's not how doctors, as you know, practice. They practice based on their education and experience. And if their experience tells them one thing, they follow that until proven otherwise.
Given that we've had this COVID pandemic where so many people have died and so many people have died after they were intubated, has that changed your viewpoint as to what type of jurors you need and what type of jurors do you need?
I think what COVID did is it actually assisted Dr. Husel's defense in the context that we all know and we all see that everyone's different. COVID affects some people drastically and to the point where, of course, death can occur. And then it also affects some people like a cold, and some people are completely asymptomatic. So it's the same virus, but yet it affects everybody differently. And that's what medicine is. It's nuances. And I think the second you take away the discretion and the ability for the doctor to exercise what those nuances are, we're running into a very dangerous area of practice of medicine. And I think every doctor needs to pay close attention to this trial. I wish we had had more publicity earlier on while we were putting this case together, so that way doctors could come forward and assist in his defense. We have had some, but it's a little too late, and we're hoping that what we can go forward with will be enough. But I can tell you that this is a very dangerous case for medicine.
Now, let me just ask you this, because you will be opening. Will you, and I don't want you to give away your trial strategies, but having worked with you and seen you work and seen a number of your not guilties in federal cases recently, are you presenting an affirmative or an active defense, I should say?
Well, as you know me, Linda. I don't go down without a fight, and that's not what we intend on doing. If this prosecution team wants to convict Dr. William Husel, they're in for the fight of their life, and I can promise you that. I can promise him that, and everyone else that they're going to have to go through me and my team, and we plan on leaving no stone unturned and fighting this to the very end. And in fact, we're looking forward to our day in court, because this is something we want to straighten out, and we want to get this straight and expose the truth and allow jurors to actually see what occurred in this case, which is a grave injustice.
So it sounds to me, Jose, that you're not going to be running away from the indictment of 25 murders. It sounds to me, if I had to take a guess listening to you, that you're going to actually try to use the 11 dismissals in your case, showing Dr. Husel did not intend to harm anybody, and this is a prosecution that is off the rails.
I wish I could sum it up that simply. But I see problems throughout this case and throughout, I see problems with the mere fact that he was charged. And I find it so dangerous that you can just take someone away from their patients. Now, mind you, there's something that needs to be known. There was no policy precluding these doses, number one. So the hospital had no limits on what Dr. Husel could prescribe, and he prescribed what he felt was in the best interest of the patient and their families. Absent anything telling him otherwise, in addition to that, there's no general standard amongst medicine. In fact, it is widely researched that there are no limits to fentanyl in these contexts.
So I have one
given all
final.
that-
I have one final question for you because we're coming up to about 30 seconds. Is Dr. Husel taking the stand?
We'll have to see. We'll have to see.
So you're not
There's
ruling it
certainly-
out?
We're not ruling that out, and I never do.
Never do. Okay. Jose
But
Baez,
go prepare.
thank you very much. I appreciate your coming on. Thank you for reminding everybody that trial teams do call me mom. It's a pleasure to have you on the Law&Crime Network. And we, of course, will be listening to see whether or not there's going to be a conviction or whether or not the narrative that the defense is putting forward will succeed here in the case of State versus Dr. William Husel. Thank you, Jose. See you soon.
Great seeing you, and remember to check in on your kids from time to time, okay?
Thanks a lot. Stay with us.